Hello and welcome to this video on the Riese and Muller Superdelite, as well as other bikes in the Riese and Muller lineup, the new bikes that have been announced and now have been sort of released on the website. This is the year 2019, so we are in September 2019 when I'm reviewing these, and I wanted to do a review partly because I'm an owner of an ordinary Delite with dual battery, and now everything got upgraded once again. So we're going to talk about the different models. Now, first of all, what you'll notice is there, as before, you have the two varieties. You have Superdelite, and by super, we mean two down two batteries. That's the principal change that's been made since the last version. And then we have the Superdelite Mountain, which has fewer models, but it has beefier suspension. So we're going to start with the Superdelite Mountain. There's only really two varieties here. If we kind of scroll down, there is Superdelite Mountain Touring, which uses a chain, and then there is Superdelite Mountain Roll-Off, which I presume uses the belt. So we can take a look at the better version. Obviously, you can see the price here; it's over $10,000. So just as iPhones have cleared the $1,000 mark, these bikes are very easily clearing the $10,000 mark. So what do you get? You get 2.8-inch tires. You get double down tube. So the down tube and the top tube both contain a battery. That is unfortunately a 500 watt-hour battery. I know some people were expecting to see 600 watt-hour batteries in these bikes, but unfortunately that hasn't happened. And then of course you have the beefier suspension. You have 140 mil up front, and you have supposedly 140 mil on the back, although strictly speaking, I'm not sure you get that much rear travel, and I'm not sure you need that much rear travel, to be honest. But the point is that the frame of the Superdelite Mountain and the ordinary Superdelite is the same frame, so they're just extending the front travel as well as extending the rear travel. So there is really, if you wanted to do an upgrade, you could do an upgrade yourself. There is no point in actually getting the mountain bike if you do want a mountain variety. And there are benefits to not getting this bike, because instead of the Fox Performance, which is the mid-range Fox suspension, you can get the Fox Factory, which is what I use, which is the best variety, shall we say, of suspension, and it also offers additional benefits if you're prepared to engineer wheels and whatnot. So this I'm not going to spend too much time discussing the Superdelite Mountain, because, well, you do get some customizations. You get to specify the size. Obviously, you have the large, the extra large, and the extra large. There is no medium or small sizes on the Superdelite, so that's something to watch out. So if your height is less than $1.70 m, I wouldn't recommend getting a Riese and Muller Delite, because it's simply too big for you. I have the smallest version, the 47 centimeter version, and I'm $1.77 m tall. So for me, this is already, at the limit. Basically, I have to put the seat almost all the way down to just ride this. You do get the folding lock. This one is actually weird, because if you were to buy the lock separately, it will cost exactly the same. And knowing how bike manufacturers work, knowing that a typical bike manufacturer gets a 50% discount on any item that they actually buy, I'm surprised they're charging the full price for the upgrade. You can also get the front carrier. The front carrier is this thing. It's basically like a piece of metal that you pay $120 for. Apart from the insanity related to the price, you'll notice it's actually interesting. It's using the bosses, which are designed for the fabric holder. So the fabric system is still on the Riese and Muller. For those of you who are not aware, the fabric system basically has two pins that are sticking out of the bike on both sides, and you can mount a bottle or like a tool keg on those pins easily, and it's actually rather convenient. And after getting my Delite, I did purchase additional bottles and a tool keg from Fabric, because, well, they're pretty good. And also you can get the carrier. So the carrier, I think, is the signature piece of the Delite, and I think you should get it because it's fantastic. It can handle up to 25 kilos and maybe even more. I remember when my son was younger, I would put him on the rear rack, and the bike would hold up just fine. So 25 kilos is easy, maybe more, but then it starts to sort of push the suspension in, and you might even end up in a situation where the back of this starts scratching on like the rear mudguard or something. So pretty good, but we're not going to spend too much time on the Delite Mountain because there's only really two variations. You don't get the high-speed variation here, and generally we're going to talk about all of these, but we're going to talk about them in the context of the ordinary Superdelite. So that's the first thing I wanted to say, that if you want to get the Superdelite Mountain, I do not recommend it because, yeah, they pre-packaged different shocks, but you can get even better shocks. So why would you spend all that money at Riese and Muller when you can spend it later and choose things yourself? So here is the Superdelite, exactly the same frame as the ordinary Delite, but there are plenty of changes to the previous models that we're going to talk about. And first of all, you'll see that there is a whole 6 different models in the Superdelite range. So we have the Superdelite Touring. If you don't want to spend over 10K, then you have a couple of models here. Superdelite Touring HS. So HS is high speed. Then there is the Superdelite Vario. I don't know how they pronounce it. You'll notice that it's no longer Nuvinci. The company is now called Enviolo, and it says there's some Enviolo 380 R&M custom. So maybe that's a custom build of the Enviolo hub designed specifically for Riese and Muller. I would not be surprised if that was the case. For those of you not familiar with Nuvinci, basically, there are no fixed gears in Nuvinci. There's a continuous drive that you kind of turn, and whatever the speed you set, it is. So with roll-off, you have 14 fixed speeds that you switch from. Here, it's kind of continuous. But really, according to the research that people did, the energy losses on the Nuvinci or the Enviolo hubs are greater than the energy losses on the roll-off. So that's probably one reason not to go for it, but I don't imagine there is any significant difference between the Nuvinci and the roll-off. But obviously they charge more for the roll-off. The roll-off is a more expensive hub, and I would recommend that if you decide to go for a hub like this, you go for the roll-off and not the Nuvinci. And then we have the Super Vario Delite GT Vario high speed, so that's the same with a high speed motor. And then the two models that I would be most inclined to discuss, that's the Superdelite GX roll-off. I have the GT roll-off, rather. I have the GX roll-off. And then the Superdelite GT roll-off high speed. So one would be with the Bosch CX motor, the other would be with the Bosch speed motor. Depending on where you live, you would want to. And actually, there is a huge issue with speed and tuning in the 4th generation Bosch motor, because it now tries to detect tuning and turn off the motor if that's the case. So I would go for the high speed. Just get rid of these like license plate holders and rear view mirrors and stuff, and nobody is ever going to know that you are riding a high speed bike, because, well, having traveled Europe extensively, I know that nobody really understands electric bicycles anyway. Nobody understands how they work, and that there are, the slow and the fast variety, and that the fast variety apparently needs like a driving license, or not a driving license, but insurance and stuff. So I would go for the high speed simply because, well, I ride an ordinary Delite, non-high speed. Now, once again, if I had to guess, I would say that the two models of the motor, so the high speed, the Bosch speed and the Bosch CX, are the same motor with different firmware. That was the case in the 3rd generation. I would imagine it would be the case in the 4th generation as well. So you're basically overpaying about 500 euros or dollars for nothing, for different firmware. Effectively, but yeah, also you're paying for the rear license plate, for the mirror here, and I think that's pretty much it. So let's take a look at what this particular bike is actually made of and what kind of upgrades you get. So you get the frame color. I actually like that they went away from the annoying frame colors like orange and blue and whatever, and just went with either gray or silver, which are both gray in my book. I think this is gray, and this is kind of greenish gray, I suppose. So there's that. The frame sizes are as before, the 47 centimeter being the typical large frame. So In terms of the cockpit, you now get a different choice. You no longer get the Bosch Nion display with the GPS built in, which I have to say that I used to kind of hate the GPS because it's based on OpenStreetMap, so it's not as accurate. But then I discovered all the fun stuff with like MTB routes that they have on there and everything. So it's actually quite convenient. I don't know why Bosch is giving up on Nion. Maybe because it was simply too expensive for people. Maybe not enough people bought it. I don't know. So there is, you can have the interior display, or you can have the kiosk display here. Now, one thing that's missing is an ability to have your mobile phone here. So that's another thing that Bosch actually has. They purchased a company which instead of using you know some display given by Bosch, you can stick your mobile phone in there. It's actually a bit sad to see. And then there is the air suspension upgrade, which I would strongly recommend against. So basically what's happening here is that you can either have the sort of the Suntour and the O2 Fusion, or whatever terrible rear shock they use. Actually, let's take a look what the rear shock is. Yeah, so the rear shock is, it's also Suntour. So that's even worse than the O2 Fusion. So either you have that, or you go for the Fox Float suspension, which gives you Fox performance. They don't even say it though. I mean, it's really unfriendly to the customer that they're not saying this is Fox performance, and you basically have to scroll down to see that you're getting a Fox 34 performance, which you're getting it at 100 mil. Notice I guess the stars here just imply optional elements, but also notice that they're saying that you can get like a 140 mil. I don't know why they're saying it. I suppose it's what's happening here is they can actually stick in a 140 both front and rear. So if you go for the upgrade, they can stick a 140 in the rear and 140 in the front, which is only going to give you a bit more suspension. And given the way that this rear swing arm is designed, I think they've designed it so that they can give you that additional travel. But I would not recommend going for the air suspension, because if you do it yourself, and it's very easy to just swap forks and rear shocks, or just take it to the local bike store, then you can get something even better. Then you can get a you have an infinite choice of forks, and Fox 34 is a fantastic fork, but the Fox Performance is it's not top of the range, it's mid-range, and I recommend going for Fox Factory because it's the best that you can get. So there is like an equipment option here. So this gets a bit weird. So no optional equipment or the GX option. So what exactly is the GX option? You might be wondering. Well, if we let's actually go ahead and read it. So if you'd like to ride your bike off-road, then you equip it with 140 mil travel. So if you choose the GX option, it will either do a Suntour, which is 140, or if you've chosen the Fox, it will do the Fox 140, which explains why there's so many things here. So if you go with the baseline, you'll get the Suntour Ion, a terrible fork that I had, and I broke it, by the way. If you decide to go for Fox, you get 100 mil, but if you have the GX option, you have the Fox Performance 140, and well, it's still performance. So I wouldn't recommend this one way or another. And again, charging $236 for essentially identical equipment, because like the Fox forks, they can be tuned from like 100 to 140. So charging extra money for this option just seems completely ridiculous. I don't know if they give anything else in addition to the travel. So blah 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 blah. So you got okay. So you get the wider pedals as well. Paying for pedals is insane, and paying for a saddle is insane. And Ergon GP3 bar and handles. No, come on. This. Oh, and you also get the dropper seat post, which you absolutely do not want on this kind of bike. So yeah, I would say that you really don't want. You really don't want any of this stuff, because I actually like the thick seat post here. You don't want a dropper seat post on this bike. You already have dual suspension. You don't need a dropper seat post. Okay, so then you have the front carrier option. Once again, the same front carrier. You also have the rear carrier, which is as standard, or there is a pannier rack option. So this one is basically does the mud guard, and then there's like what we typically call a stabilizer rail on the mud guard, which prevents it from bending, and you kind of, you brace it against this position, and then it attaches against that position, and then then it becomes a load bearing structure. So you can put the pannier racks on the side of this. I'm not sure how comfortable I would be with having the pannier racks so close to the wheel, but that's an option, and it's a bit of a downgrade, to be honest, because the carrier is the selling point of this bike, and the carrier is actually great. I would totally recommend the carrier. So this is the setup for the bike. Basically, I've talked about the configurable options. Now let's talk about what is actually available in terms of the components. So we talked about the suspension fork and the rear shock. Typically, what I would recommend is you purchase the Suntour Ion with 100 mil travel, and then ride the bike a little bit, and then get a good front and rear shock. I would recommend the 140 millimeter Fox 34, or if you want to be fancy, you can go for a Fox 36, which is nice. You will never have fat bike tires in this bike, at least on the rear, so I wouldn't recommend the Fox 34 Plus option for building a fat bike wheel, because then it's going to look weird, and that's the way I have my bike set up. But it does look weird, so I don't recommend it. In terms of the headset, I actually like the block lock. I think the block lock is one of those like clever integrations. I enjoy it, really. It solves a problem. Well, it obviously solves a problem for Riese and Muller, because then their top stem, like the angled stem, has to be doesn't have to be precise in terms of the tightening of the head tube. So the seat post, I don't actually know Satori Trident, but the fact that they've gone to 31.6 is a bit sad, because the seat post I have is 34.9. It's a thicker seat post, and I do really appreciate having that seat post on a bike as heavy and substantial as the Delite here. So in terms of the tires, I suppose you either get the Moto X, which are 2.8, or you get the Rock Razor, which are also 2.8. If you go for the upgrade, so that is I guess the little star is that GX upgrade that we've been talking about. Well, the tubes are standard. I actually, if you want a recommendation, the tubes I recommend are the Maxxis Freeride tubes, because they're thicker. You really want 1.2 mil tubes if you can get 1.5, but that's typically like downhill material. So you do want thicker tubes in the long run, because why not? It's already a heavy bike. You're not concerned about the weight specifically. Now, speaking of the rims, my model has 40 millimeter Alex rims, and this is a bit of a downgrade to 35 mil rims. I don't think that's a particularly good idea. Personally, I would say that even wider rims would be better, sort of 45 mil, but this is what you get. Now, the front hub is pretty terrible. Novatech makes hubs which would just fail within 2 years, so not much you can do here. The rear hub is the electronically controlled roll-off, which is excellent. Roll-off is what you're effectively paying money for. In terms of the battery, you're getting to 500 watt hours. Like I said, I would be expecting 600 watt hours, but sadly, that's not what we're going to get. So in terms of the motor, you get either the Speed or the CX motor. It's a lighter motor. It's much better. But once again, in the CX variety, it detects tuning. So if you want to buy a CX and take it up to the performance speed, kind of speeds like I did with my Delite, you're not going to be able to do it, sadly. Maybe they'll figure out some solution to this whole speed problem. Maybe the Badass box will actually take care of Gen 4, because I think it's fairly easy to to build a box which simply divides the speed by 2 or something universally, but I'm not sure, to be honest. I think they'll figure it out eventually. In terms of the display, the choices are rather limited because I don't see the option here for the Nion. I don't see the option here for the mobile phone attachment. So the Kiox is a new and somewhat unknown kind of device. Crankset is pretty much the same as before, the 170mm FSA. The chainring, because it's a belt drive, it's actually a massive chainring. It's got like 60 teeth. Now, I don't like tiny chainrings like they have on the like they have previously, but I don't like these massive ones either. I think that it just looks really weird. And but you know, if it works, it works, and you have all your chain tensioners or belt tensioners here just to keep everything together. You have a chain guard. There is the chain itself is the Gates carbon drive, obviously. The rear, the roll-off attached sprocket has 19 teeth. The saddle you basically throw away as soon as you get. I don't care what kind of moderate blah 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 stuff it says here. The pedals you also throw away, not even worth discussing. The electronic shifter on the E14 is of course a fantastic thing, and that's something that you do want to have. The handlebars are actually really heavy. When I got the Ergotech, I also had the Ergotech handlebars. They are stupidly heavy. They are insane, and so I would not recommend getting them. By the way, you'll notice that on the kind of the sporty option, it's giving you a 25.4 mil handlebars. I mean, you really want to stay away from this standard. This standard is bad. You do want to 31.8. Otherwise, it would just be changing the stem as well as the handlebars. Having Satori R&M custom, well, I guess they have this handlebar to take down the weight, and also they have cable integration so they can have the dropper seat post. You really want to stay away from stuff like this. Really, it's not just not worth the effort. But then again, even this stem is not as great as the stem I had on my Riese and Muller, because I have the Ergotech angled stem, and it's actually really nice. It's one of those things that I really enjoy about the Delite, the stem that they used. And now unfortunately they are using something much simpler. Actually, hold on, it looks like, well, wait a second, that picture here is still Ergotech. It's still the Ergotech stem in the picture. But here, oh wait, maybe it's the same stem. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just a different model. That's why I didn't recognize the name here. So the grips you also want to throw away immediately. I recommend the Brooks Argon leather grips. They are really nice. Brakes, sadly we went from Shimano XT to Magura MT4 or Magura MT5. I find these brakes to be horrible. I don't enjoy Magura, and given the first chance, I would replace them for Shimano Saint or something decent. The front light, of course, has been a downgrade from the years when I had my Delite, because they are giving you, and actually this is really bizarre. They're saying Supernova M99 Mini Pro. Well, actually, you either have the Pro, which is what you want. You want the Supernova M99 Pro. I think the Mini is kind of like an insult, and I actually saw people that swap it out for the proper kind of expensive one. But the way they phrase it, is there even a Mini Pro light, or is there just a Mini and they added the Pro word to confuse people, because that's totally possible. The tail light, once again, the Bush & Miller top light, which I have, is perfectly fine for me, and having the Supernova here, well, it's needed here because you have plate illumination and stuff. So you basically, if you buy this bike, you throw all of this out and you just remove the rear plate, and then you don't have to have the plate illumination. You just have an ordinary brake light. Mud guards are well, I guess they might have upgraded them, but I'm not sure, to be honest. Personally, I replaced the mud guards with the Pletcher mud guards because they're wider, and if you run 3-inch tires, well, they do have their issues. So I would maybe stick with the mud guards that are here. The luggage rack is made by Riese and Muller. I don't know, rubber. What does that mean? There is a supernova horn, apparently, no idea what this is. The kickstand, actually, the little plasticky part at the bottom of the kickstand will eventually fall off, and you'll end up just scratching every surface you see, or buying another one of these plasticky parts. If I ever buy a Delite again, I would remove the plastic part and like super glue it really tight together, because it doesn't seem to hold very well. The ABUS Bordeaux Plus alarm is an upgrade on the ABUS Bordeaux lock, which is a nice lock by itself. I use it all the time. It's fine. So the alarm, I suppose, is like you can set the alarm so that when somebody starts touching your bike, the alarm goes off. That's a pretty good thing. And the mirror you can once again throw away, so as to not give anyone any clue that you're riding a speed pedelec bike. So with all of that said, all I can say is, well, there are some benefits, obviously, the double down to, but the real downside is that you can no longer buy the non-high speed model and just do a de-restrict, or at least I'm not sure what the status is on this. But so what is not here? Is there anything here that's missing? Well, one of the things you're not going to see here is the Muller ABS. So if you remember, a year or two ago, there was this hype about the automatic braking system that Muller implemented on electric bikes, integrated with Bosch. Basically, the idea was that if you lock out the front brake, then ABS, just like in your car, will turn on. It will repeatedly trigger the front brake so as to prevent the liftoff of the rear brake. That required a different kind of rotor and speed measurements integrated into the rotor. So that was a really big dependence on Muller. And that thing is not available here. Let's actually take a look. Maybe it's available in the non-high-speed version. I would not be surprised if that was the case. Let's take a look at the non-high-speed version. So it's this one. Maybe the let's take a look at brakes. Brakes. There we go. So no, you do get just the ordinary Muller MT4 or MT5. I'm not sure you even get rear light brake detection. Maybe you do. I'm not sure whether you get this here. Typically, the setup is that Muller integrates with Supernova, so you can plug in the lights and the brakes into the motor connections, and then when you brake, the rear brake light kind of turns on. So it does say kind of integrated brake light, but really we're not told whether or not the brakes actually trigger it. So I personally cannot tell just from this description. But apart from that, the overall kind of specifications of the bike are pretty much the same, and they have all the same stuff as the high-speed version, except for a different motor. So what can I say? If I were to purchase the Superdelite today, I would obviously go for the high-speed version, because now you are basically stuck with the situation that if you want to ride at high speeds, you have to buy the high-speed version. And luckily for me, the in Europe at least, nobody really knows the difference between like high speed and low speed. So I would buy this. I would rip off the license plate and the rear view mirror, change the rear light, and we're basically good to go. As far as upgrades go, well, the idea is pretty much the same. You keep the bike, the rear hub, and the drive system, and maybe like the C-tube and stuff, and some of the stems and stuff. But you can throw away everything else. So in terms of what I would personally do, I would do pretty much the same as I did on my Delite. So I would change mudguards, have much wider mudguards. I would change the suspension to Fox Factory. It's a bit more expensive, but it's the best that you can get, and I certainly enjoy it. You can even put a slightly wider wheel on the front if that's what you want. So you can go as crazy as 3.8, but personally, having at least 3.0 on the front, I think makes sense for a bike like this. And the front hub, really, the Novatec hub, I would really throw it away as soon as possible. I would just basically rebuild the whole wheel if you're interested in riding like... well, one of the things you can do, by the way, is you can build it around a really wide rim, let's say 65mm, because it will fit into Fox 34 just fine. And then you can run 3.0 tires, and they're going to be kind of wider, not necessarily deeper, but they're going to be wider, and that's going to offer additional grip with the road. So really up to how you want to play this. Now the light here, I don't quite understand whether it's the Mini or the Pro. You obviously want the Supernova M99 Pro. The brakes I would change to Shimano Saint as soon as I could, because, well, or if you don't want to spend that much money, you can change them to Shimano XT. But keeping Magura MT4, MT5, I hate them. I have them on several bikes and I hate them. Grips, I would go for Ergon Brooks. What else? Get a nice seat, like Surface RX Cruiser is a nice seat. Pedals, I would go for whatever. There's plenty of nice pedals out there to everyone's liking. I would super glue the tip of the Pleasure, not the Pleasure. What is it? The kickstand. I would super glue that tip in place before I lose it, because I actually lost it at some point. And yeah. So the main thing here is that you can get your own suspension. You can get your own 140 mil and just stick it in there yourself, and that's pretty much, you know, all that you would need to do. So instead of Fox Performance, you don't have to get Fox, by the way. So on the front, I would say that Fox is probably essential, because a Fox Factory is the best thing that you can get, like literally. But on the rear, it's really up to you. Any rear shock that actually fits into this space is fine. Of course, if you go for Fox Factory, then it fits just fine. And I have the Fox Factory on the rear on my Delite, and it's also wonderful rear shock. But you do have to be careful to clean it all the time, because this spot can get really dirty. So you do have to clean it like religiously. Otherwise, all that Kashima coating is just basically going to come off, and that would be very sad. So this is my review of the Superdelite. It's really a natural progression. I think that Riese and Muller always wanted to have a belt drive with roll-off, not just Novinci, because remember, initially it was just Novinci that had the belt drive. Roll-off didn't have it, but now they have it without any. I don't think there is a tensioner there. I think there might be like a pulley wheel or something, but there is no tensioner. There is a tensioner-like construct here, because the whole thing will flex. Obviously the rear swing arm will go up and down, so there's a mechanism there. But having the belt drive is what many people have wanted for a long time, and having it with roll-off is fantastic. So overall, I gotta congratulate Riese and Muller on doing exactly what people wanted. Everyone wanted the dual inner tube battery. Of course, they could have made it more accessible and not charge people so much money, like $10,000 plus will basically turn off most people. So most people, when looking at 10K in bicycle costs, will just say there is no point. For this price, you can get something like the Luna Apex, for example, which is more powerful and, you know, just a fat bike. One thing I would recommend, if Riese and Muller was listening to me, is make this a fat bike. Seriously, just put 3.8 inch at the rear and the front, because that gives you even more comfort. But of course, you know, this is more of a touring bike than a kind of a universal bike, and I suppose they're afraid that if they make this a fat bike, then fewer people will buy it. So that's my review of the Superdelite. I hope you enjoy it, and stay tuned for more reviews.